Good morning. It's Monday, February 17th. It is February 17th. We're doing this show today because the multi-front war is now 500 days old, and that is one hell of a milestone that we simply cannot ignore. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. I'm coming to you today from Jackson, Wyoming, and as it turns out, that's exactly where I was 500 days ago when this war broke out. I'll never forget that weekend. I remember feeling so helpless, so far from where the Hamas pogrom had taken place. But I soon understood once I returned to Washington that I was still helpless and distant from the action. Even going to the Middle East didn't change that, not 3 times, if I'm to be perfectly honest with you. Over the last 500 days, work has never been busier. I'd like to think that my colleagues and I at FDD have helped the public understand the challenges of this war. I'd like to think that we've helped the U.S., Israeli, and other governments grapple with their options. And I'd like to think that you, our audience here at the FDD Morning Brief, is better informed. It's been our honor to do this work, but here's hoping for an end to this war soon. Today's guest is Nave Shachar, the Gulf Cooperation Council and MENA Innovation Diplomacy Director at Startup Nation Central. SNC is a terrific organization that is dedicated to strengthening Israel's innovation ecosystem and fostering global partnerships. That's a lot of business speak. Maybe Nave can explain, but here's what you really need to know. Nave has extensive experience working with government agencies, Fortune 500 companies, and major regional enterprises. He works to build economic and technological cooperation between Israel and the Arabian Gulf, advancing regional collaboration through innovation. In short, he's working to put the Abraham Accords on steroids. We'll speak to him in just a few minutes. Speaking to a gaggle of reporters in front of Air Force One, President Donald Trump said yesterday that he told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, quote, "You can do whatever you want," end quote, as it relates to the hostage deal. This comes as Trump's Middle East envoy, Stephen Witkoff, said there would absolutely be phase 2 of the hostage deal with Hamas. First, let me say that nobody ever accused the Trump administration, this one or the last one, of having coordinated communications. But there is something more important happening here. Israelis of all stripes can see that things are going well. Trump has given Israel the weapons that it needs to win future wars. That on-again, off-again political tension between Washington and Jerusalem since the war began has undeniably eased after Trump's return. And the president is unabashedly on Israel's side as it relates to Iran, Hamas, and those other terrorist proxies. But Bibi is now like the dog that finally caught the mailman. What does he do from here? Does he reignite the war that has rocked the Middle East since October 7th? One can only imagine the international pressure he would sustain. But if he doesn't take advantage of this reversal of fortune, his electorate is bound to get antsy. It already is. Bibi and Trump are at a crossroads, folks. The entire Middle East is there too. I'm certainly not itching for this war to escalate again, but I also don't want to see another war erupt because opportunities were never taken. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in Israel over the weekend. As one might expect, he met with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on Gaza. Rubio said that Hamas must release all of the hostages. Then he said that Hamas needs to be eradicated. That's a quote. Rubio said that Trump's plans for post-war Gaza may be bold and shocking, but that out-of-the-box thinking is sorely needed. It's time to stop pursuing the same non-solutions. On Iran, Rubio reaffirmed the obvious. The Iranian regime is the driving force behind the violence and the instability across the Middle East. The regime, Rubio said, can never have nuclear weapons. Rubio also met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog and Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. Meeting with Israel's president, well, that's always ceremonial, but the meeting with Sa'ar was all business. Rubio and Sa'ar discussed expanding the Abraham Accords, combating lawfare and anti-Semitism, and pursuing the development of a corridor connecting India to Europe via Israel. Lots of work ahead for these two, it seems. Headline 2, on Friday evening, Hezbollah supporters attacked a UN peacekeeping convoy. The convoy belonged to the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL. The peacekeepers were en route to Rafik Hariri International Airport in Beirut when a mob attacked the three-vehicle convoy. Footage circulated online showing men carrying those signature yellow flags as they chased down peacekeepers attempting to flee. The rioters set at least one car on fire. 2 UNIFIL personnel were injured, including the force's outgoing deputy chairman. Talk about biting the hand that feeds. UNIFIL has been Hezbollah's BFF over the years, looking the other way consistently while Hezbollah armed up and prepared for war with Israel. But this didn't come out of the blue, folks. Hezbollah supporters have been protesting near the airport in Beirut since Thursday, when Lebanese aviation authorities prevented an Iranian plane from landing. That plane wasn't allowed to land because Iran has been smuggling cash to Hezbollah on passenger flights out of Tehran. We talked about this on the program on Friday. Hezbollah supporters blocked the road leading to the airport for 3 days before the Lebanese armed forces fired tear gas to disperse the protesters on Saturday. Yesterday, Hezbollah condemned the attack on the UNIFIL convoy. Oh, and also condemned the LAF for firing tear gas at peaceful civilians. That's a quote. Hilarious. Beyond all of that, keep an eye on Lebanon over the next 24 hours, folks. Newly minted Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem says Israel needs to leave Lebanon tomorrow, according to the terms of the ceasefire deal. Israel says it's staying in 5 locations. That won't be nearly enough to keep Hezbollah from rearming, but it's enough to put these two bitter foes on a collision course again, and they're already on one after Israel struck a terror target deep inside the country yesterday. So keep an eye there. Headline 3, the IDF was hard at work in Gaza over the weekend. Yesterday, the IDF carried out a drone strike near Rafah in southern Gaza. That strike targeted a group of Hamas fighters who were approaching Israeli troops. 3 Hamas police officers were reportedly killed. Predictably, Hamas condemned the strike and accused Israel of violating the ceasefire. The group claimed the terrorists were in the area to secure the entry of humanitarian aid. Right. Hours later, the IDF reportedly carried out another drone strike in the vicinity of a car driving north along an unapproved route. That was a warning shot. So were the others fired in the vicinity of several locations where suspects approached Israeli troops. And then the IDF shot down a drone crossing from Egypt into Gaza. The drone was carrying an assault rifle and ammunition. This continues to occur along the Egyptian border. And I personally want to know what Cairo is doing to stop it. All right, it's time for that interview with Nave Shachar of Startup Nation Central. Nave does some tremendous work building bridges between Israel and the Gulf through technology and innovation. The Abraham Accords are moving ahead accordingly. Let's welcome Nave now. Welcome to the program, Nave Shachar.
Thank you, John. So glad to be here. As someone that's following FDD for quite a long, it's an honor to be here with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. So let's get into it. Over the past few years, since the signing of the Abraham Accords, we've seen unprecedented economic cooperation in the Middle East, but the landscape is constantly evolving. I think that's an understatement. How would you describe the current state of regional economic collaboration right now?
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think before diving into the question, just to give you a brief about Startup Nation Central, it will be important from where are we coming at that. So Startup Nation Central is an NGO, non-profit, non-revenue organization, fully funded by philanthropy, with a mission to connect the Israel innovation into global opportunities. And when we look at that, at the Middle East, we see it as we see it the region as an asset for us to build on, and the ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, is part of our work to create those bridges. Obviously there's a lot of there's tremendous opportunities. I think even the fact that the Israelis the Israel economy sees itself more and more not as an economic island where we used to be thinking about it like that, and being able to connect those opportunities even on a geographic on that note, I think it makes more and more sense to look at that. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunities right now. It depends on each country is a little bit different. I think that if you're looking at the UAE as more homogenic, the opportunities are more solid. You can see more and more business engagement and investments to Israeli companies. Other countries struggling a little bit more on how to manage this crisis from their point of view. But all along, I think that there is a lot of opportunity that are now not obviously presented and presented in a way that it's public, but obviously a lot of things happening between Israel and those countries.
All right, well, let's talk about the big prize. I mean, Saudi Arabia is the big one, right? So what are the most pressing challenges preventing deeper cooperation between Israel and Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, so Saudi Arabia, with a lack of diplomatic relations, this is the main obstacle. We obviously see that the main struggle that we see for Israeli companies to create cooperation with the Gulf countries based on the fact that those are small markets, and the idea is to find joint ventures or building a financial structure to tap into other markets. So basically, the umbrella of those cooperation aiming towards more and more cooperation of localization of tech from Israel to those countries. So it takes time, first of all, to create that, and there are no sufficient financial institutions that can target those types of opportunities. So if you're talking about the different investment things that are out there in the Gulf, so you can see that most of them are big tickets, not too much oriented to the types of ventures that are out there in Israel. And being able to fund those opportunities makes a little bit difficult for at this stage. But yeah, this is part of that.
Well, I mean, given these complexities, and I think let's broaden out here for a minute, what role does innovation play in advancing economic partnerships in the Gulf? I mean, I'm thinking here about Israel's deserved reputation as startup nation, right? The innovation that comes out of Israel has been incredible. And the Gulf countries thirst for tech solutions. I mean, they're starving for this right now. So you see this, this confluence, but yet we're still having challenges connecting the dots in some cases, right?
Yeah, so I think that it comes from different point of view. The first of all is with any normal engagement with Israeli companies, there's a process of building trust. The business style of how to do, like how things being done to create business opportunities are ingrained with creating trust between the different parties, and that's taking time. There's a lot of topics that they are wishing to implement, like we're talking about food security, and now AI is becoming more and more important, as I'm saying, about data centers and semiconductors. And I think that that there are a lot of opportunities that are out there, even from investment perspective, but also in implementing those kind of, or localizing those technologies in the Middle East.
Okay, so here's an interesting question that I've had a little bit of exposure to this. I'm guessing you've seen more. How are the Gulf states' sovereign wealth funds reshaping the investment landscape? Are they players in the normalization space? I mean, on the one hand, they've got a huge amount of capital to disperse and to invest. On the other hand, making an investment on behalf of a country that is ambivalent or worse about Israel, that's complicated, right?
Yeah, so I think that more and more you see them interested in less direct investment, but more incubating industries. And in these kind of opportunities, you need to they're wanting to have an access is for sure, but how you are plugging into their ecosystem, this is the main goal for that. And I think that as we are learning, we have a learning curve since the Abraham Accords, and we saw that more and more companies started first as looking for investment. Usually Israeli companies connect the investment to their strategy. This is why a lot of Israeli companies are directing towards the US. A lot of the LPs that are investing in Israeli companies come from the US. And now there is an opportunity to access to other capital that is out there. But there, those countries are looking for how to become a hub. And Mubadala and PIF and all those sovereign wealth funds are looking to see how we can bring the tech over and create those infrastructure of business hub that can be relevant to their growth. So being able to connect the dots and bringing the know-how and the tech to those places, that this is a real opportunity. Today, the regular financial mechanism of normal VC investment in Israel is not sufficient to be able to do that. But we saw the past 4 years, we saw a lot of investments coming from UAE, Bahrain, and I assume that it will continue as such.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Geopolitical tensions is what I'm thinking about the whole time as you talk about the investment coming in from the Gulf into Israel, or the cooperation that you're trying to foster. And specifically, I'm talking about the war in Gaza. And I'm sure that has impacted the regional investment dynamic. Arab states may want to engage with Israel, but they are still shocked and angered by the images that they see on channels. I'm thinking specifically like Al Jazeera. I know that doesn't play well. Every time I've been in the Gulf during even times of smaller conflicts, right, more contained conflicts, you see the reaction, and it's not good, right? So how does this impact your work? How do you navigate that day to day?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, it varies between each country, as I said before. And I think that you need to differentiate between the leadership, the private sector, and the street level. If you take national security and economic prosperity for both, for those countries, for Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and UAE, I think after October 7th, it became much bigger, the alignment of interest. Because for them, it's not something that is abstract. 7 days before the Abraham Accords, I got a message from a senior official from Bahrain. She told me that her niece was severely injured in a Houthi attack in South Saudi Arabia, and 3 were died in that incident. For them, it's very clear about the security alignment. And sitting with Saudis in Abu Dhabi, talking about they were counting the kilometers between Neom and Tel Aviv. They understand that stability means their continuing growth for prosperity. And I think that there is understanding from leadership perspective on how we need to mitigate that and how to create a calmer region for everyone. When you talk about the private sector is managing it as managing the crisis and trying to figure out how to come out of it. And the street level is very affected by that. And personally, each one can decide what he thinks and what he was exposed. But I think that if you compare it even to other places in Europe, so they understand more. They know who is Hamas. They know who is Hezbollah. They understand the different dynamics, and it's not far from them. So I think more and more you can see that there is more common interest on moving forward, even more than other places worldwide.
All right, I'm going to ask you to just take out your crystal ball for our last question. So I want you to look ahead. What's the next major milestone that we should watch for in regional normalization and economic cooperation? I know everyone's talking about Donald Trump and MBS and their bromance and the resumption of the normalization talks that were happening. And people are saying maybe it won't be called the Abraham Accords. Maybe it's going to be called the Isaac and Ishmael Accords or whatever we're going to call it. Is that the thing to look for, or is there something else that you're watching?
So this is absolutely a game changer for the region. If that will happen, and we sense the backwind of that in the past since the election, it's apparent. People are talking about it, and there is something to hope. I think that there are two things that I can think about. I think that there are more and more understanding on how to seize more or create more or fill more content to whatever it is on the title of the Abraham Accords. The Israeli startups are understanding more on how to navigate those markets. There's an growing appetite that was slowed, but you can see if you mentioning in the beginning about India, Middle East, Europe corridor. This is huge for everyone. It's clear more that it needs to be more that it needs to happen. And like one Saudi told me, the water already started falling down the stream, so we cannot reverse the situation. So I think that this is something that to wait for. And the last thing, I think that we would see more and more joint ventures, because this is the way that it's supposed to work better. We will see more VCs and investment firms that will be with a mixed founders, because I think that it can create the synergy of East and West through the Gulf countries.
All right, fascinating stuff. We're going to leave it there. Thank you, Nave Shachar, for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
All right, here's what FDD has on tap for you today. FDD research analyst Mariam Wahba penned a powerful piece for Visegrad 24 on the murder of 21 Coptic Christians by ISIS a decade ago after they refused to renounce their religion. While many in the West frame this as a tragic terrorist attack involving passive victims, Mariam emphasizes that their decision to accept their fate was a statement of their profound commitment of their faith. Powerful stuff. Check out the latest episode of FDD's Foreign Policy featuring founder and president Cliff May, senior advisor Rich Goldberg, and former IDF international spokesperson Jonathan Conricus. The trio discussed the two-state solution, that fading dream still championed by swamp creatures in Washington, but also a minority of well-meaning activists in Israel and the Arab world. Sadly, the two-state solution has not solved anything, and the 10-7 wars have not inspired much optimism over the past 16 months. So what now? Tune in for this insightful conversation wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, FDD's Ben Cohen has a piece for JNS highlighting the support Israel enjoys from a majority of American Jews, despite what anti-Zionists say. The anti-Zionists, these are Jews, certainly make a lot of noise and are often wielded as useful idiots by the pro-Hamas hordes and try to argue that their anti-Semitism is, well, not anti-Semitism. Ben argues that Jews in America need to come together to answer the ugliness we see on campus, Main Street, and beyond. And that's it for this President's Day edition of the program. If you're hungry for more, check out the expert analysis section on our website, fdd.org. Read our quick takes on X @FDD, or watch the videos we post on Instagram and YouTube. And make that tax-deductible donation at fdd.org/invest. Tune in Wednesday for another episode of the FDD Morning Brief. I'll be joined by my old friend, policy analyst and Middle East observer, Dan Pfefferman. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.